One of the most important things in the power game is the ability to think ahead.
In life, it's not a question of beating yourself up and saying, why did I do this? Why did I do that? It's a matter of being more realistic. The closer you're able to get to reality, to what is really going on in a situation, to what people are doing to you or what is happening around you, the better your strategies will be.
He's absolutely brilliant at one law of power. It's the source of all of his power. And I can't think of anybody in history who's ever been better at it. Court attention at all cost. I remember 8 years ago or so, I was traveling. I think I was in Singapore. Everybody was talking about Donald Trump. Everyone around the world is obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with him. He's in my head all of the time, right? He courts attention at all costs. He's brilliant at that. He knows how to turn everything that looks like a negative into some kind of marketing and publicity thing. He knows he's very, very good at the attention game, not just at getting attention, but how to use that attention to his advantage, okay? That has brought him a lot of power. But there is a limit to that because that isn't enough, that isn't power by itself, right? And so one of the most important things in the power game, as I say, it's a delicate game, is the ability to think ahead, plan all the way to the end, which is law 28 or something like that. Plan all the way to the end. Think not just this move, this immediate move, but 2, 3, 4, 5 moves in advance, like you do in chess. If you're a good chess player, you're 10 moves ahead further than your opponent is, right? Okay, it's an extremely important part of power because it means you see the longer vision. And when things start interrupting your vision, when all kinds of circumstances arise that you hadn't expected, you know how to deal with it because, oh, this is my end game. And if this occurs, well, I tack a little bit in this direction, but eventually I have to head here. It gives you strength, it gives you this kind of anchor in life, right? This is a man, because of his character, because of his ego, because of his extreme narcissism. I'm not trying to be political here because I think everybody sees his incredible narcissism. Mm-hmm. He can't get out of the moment. He can't get out of how people are reacting against him. He can't get out of his rage, his resentment, his anger, his bitterness, and see the bigger picture. And he moderated some of the things that he ended up doing, right? If he was more attentive to the larger picture, that his power base, he brought in Latinos, Black people who weren't part of the Republican base ever before. If he moderated, if he was smart, if he could think ahead, he would be doing really well right now. He'd be very popular. Unfortunately, he would be, right? But he can't think that far ahead. You can only think in immediate terms. This person insulted me. Well, I have to humiliate him. I have to try and sue him and get him put in prison, right? He can't see the larger picture. And that is a very, very limiting factor in power. I don't know. He's like a cat with 9 lives. He keeps escaping things and you think he's done, he's finished. He pops out of another bag and he's fine. I think that eventually it's going to catch up with him. But as I said, I don't know. You can't deal with that feeling, right? It's unbearable. So you're going to try and get power some way that you can. On the individual level, you'll find people play, and I talked about this in the book, negative power games. They'll become passive aggressive. That happens a lot in relationships where one person doesn't feel like they have the power, but they don't feel strong enough to directly attack or deal with the person. They become indirect, they become passive aggressive. When you feel like you have no power, won't be aggressive, you'll be passive aggressive, mm-hmm. right? On a collective level, we can see countries around the world that have felt disrespected and screwed and feel like they've been humiliated on the world stage. And it creates a kind of a similar dynamic to the passive aggressiveness. Well, we're going to get back at you some way. You can't control us completely. And, even to some degree, I mean, this is maybe a horrible way to put it, but like with Iran right now, they obviously don't have the power that the United States military has, but they can certainly be very passive aggressive. I mean, it's not really passive, but they can be very indirect. They can when you're weak, this is the whole origin of guerrilla warfare and terrorism, right? And guerrilla warfare is one of the most powerful strategies ever invented in military history. It's one side that has no power, but they use their lack of power to torment and torture the other side. And they don't, as the phrase goes, the weaker side doesn't have to win, they just have to survive. And so, they'll play games like that. But if you don't have power, you're going to find it somehow, some way, in some manner. You're going to do whatever you can to change that dynamic. But in the end, I don't know how successful that is, because it's kind of like you're riding a tiger. You're creating so much anger and resentment. Can you control it? Where are you in control of it, or is it leading you around? Appealing to people's basest emotions is a very, very powerful political weapon, right? But it can hurt you, and it can bite back and hurt you in the end, because you can't really control it, So, but I see what you're saying, and it is, and the sense of a country feeling that kind of grievance is an incredibly powerful, motivating factor. And I see that around the world right now, we're living through a very chaotic moment in history. I read a lot of history. I don't know a lot of things about this world, but I do read a lot of history. And it's a very strange moment. It's one of those transitional moments where the paradigms are shifting. What we used to believe in doesn't seem to work anymore, right? And it makes people go crazy. I feel like sometimes I was on a bike ride the other day and I was thinking, sometimes I feel like I'm living in an insane asylum. Like people are literally going mad, and I include myself in that. I don't separate myself in that. And so when people feel like they have no control, mostly over their pocketbook, which is happening a lot now, but also a sense of the future, my values, what matters, they go a little bit crazy. And it creates incredible space for demagogues to use that kind of confusion, to use that sense of powerlessness to whip people up into a frenzy, to get control of them. And it's a very dangerous time, because you're seeing a steering towards authoritarianism all around the globe. And what's going on here? Why is this happening now? It happened in the 1920s and the 30s, but it seems to be happening now. And I think there's this overall sense that people feel like we're losing control over their own lives, over the lives, the future of their country, their children. It's a very strange, dark moment, I think.
I know that there's this sort of prejudice, this general thought of war as being something very violent and aggressive, where it's sort of barbaric and people are killing each other, but this is kind of ridiculous, because there's a whole other side to warfare that's just so fascinating. And it's basically the mental, the rational, the strategic side of war. And essentially, if you study war at all, you understand quite simply that it's the mental part, the strategy, the thinking that goes behind it, that is much, much more important than the physical aspect of actually fighting. And that's what fascinates me about it. Everything starts with your own mind. So strategy is a mental process. And so I have the first part of the book, I call it self-directed warfare. It's almost a spiritual concept. All of the great religions in the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, they all talk about a kind of spiritual warfare with your own human nature. And I talk about there in the first part of the book that you're at war with certain parts of your mind that constantly present obstacles. And you could know all of the strategies, you could have a lot of knowledge, but if you don't fight these mental habits, none of it's worth nothing. Sun Tzu was a genius, and the reason I mean, his book has stood the test of time, 2,500 years, he's still read to this day. And he has a concept where he defines the art of war, which I believe will never be surpassed. And he says the art of war is basically to win with minimum bloodshed and minimum violence. An army that goes in and mows down the enemy and kills a lot of people and destroys a city simply creates escalating cycles of violence. So the whole game in war is to win with the minimum amount of bloodshed and the minimum amount of violence, and a strategist must try and get as close as possible to that ideal. I think that has incredible relevance and application to any struggle, any fight you're going on in your life. You need to win with the minimum amount of resistance. One of my favorite books of all time is actually the I Ching, which is a Chinese book, an oracle book going back to ancient times, which has a sort of a similar, I find a very fun structure that draws you in. The second thing is, I always believe, I have chapters in the Power book and in this book, that the structure of something, the way you form it, the form or structure itself, is actually an incredibly important decision, very strategic in itself. And I'm trying to communicate in different ways. I'm trying to communicate with an image, as you say, with sort of stimulating thoughts from all different directions. So it's all very conscious. Well, the thing about warfare, which I think is applicable to life, is the closer you're able to get to reality, to what is really going on in a situation, to what people are doing to you or what is happening around you, the better your strategies will be. And the main block that you have to understanding, to being as close as possible to this reality, is yourself, your mind, your emotions. You tend to see what you want to see in the world. Your feelings of hatred or love or lust or greed, they're constantly coloring what you see in very subtle ways. And so the process for a strategist is to get rid of as much of that emotions that is coloring your viewpoint and getting the capacity to see the world for what it is. On the other side, Sun Tzu talks about it. You want to make it harder for your opponents to see reality. You want them to be mistaking things, to deceive them. But you yourself have to get your mind as close as possible to what is really happening. And so I'm saying in life, it's not a question of beating yourself up and saying, why did I do this? Why did I do that? It's a matter of being more realistic. And if you begin to think of yourself as the master of your own destiny, you're the master strategist commanding your own army, it's actually a very empowering, liberating idea, as opposed to something where you just sort of beat yourself down and get down on yourself. It's more the fact that anytime something goes wrong in life, you can look at it and say, you were responsible for that in some way. You could have done things differently. Go back, analyze what you did in this mistake you made, whenever, and see, if I had done A instead of B, it would have turned out differently. And I think you can do this for any decisions that you have in life. Your morale, how you feel about yourself, is very important. And I have chapters in this, how you have to go into battle, and I think life is full of battle all of the time. You can't go into battle with negative feelings, feeling that you don't have confidence. So your own confidence, your own self-esteem has incredible importance in how you end up going to warfare. So the idea is just to be realistic and to learn from your experiences. If you don't learn from your own experiences, then they have no value to you. And so you have to constantly assess, this is what I did in this situation, this was right and this was wrong. And I think that's a very powerful tool. I think this is one of the most important chapters in the book, and I think it's the foundation of any good strategist, is your capacity to let go of the past and to not fight the last war. And what that means is the last war will have two effects on you. Either, if it was a defeat, it will bring you down and you'll become more timid and you'll carry that into your next battle and you'll become cautious and worried, etc. Number two, if it was a victory, you will become elated, you will become drunk on your own success, and you'll think, I just have to repeat what I did the last time, which is a great mistake, and lots of mistakes in warfare have been because of that. I talk in the book, I say, we all want to recapture our childhood. But a lot of times we think of that, we want to recapture our good looks or that kind of happy feeling we have when we were children. I'm saying what you really want to recapture from your childhood is your mind. The fact that you had this very fluid mind that was open to experiences, that could take things in for what they were and learn from them and absorb, that kind of mental fluidity is the foundation of any great strategist. And oddly enough, the greatest of them all, like Napoleon, Hannibal, they all had this kind of childlike capacity to just simply take what was coming at them and not bring their own preconceptions to what was going on.